welcome to another episode of Tell Me More. Katy Reed-Hodges, Dr. Wiles, and myself, Luke Stehr, are here in the studio talking Psalm 127 and about how God meets us in everyday life. It's a conversation we hope you'll enjoy, and we're glad you're here.
Welcome to Tell Me More. We're here, Dr. Wiles and Luke, and they are fresh off of a trip last week to Ascent.
Where we both had, I think, the worst plane rides home we've ever had.
Oh, me.
Well, you referenced it yesterday in the sermon.
I did.
Mine was also bad.
Before we hop into the sermon and the Ascent series and that it's Lent, y'all want to give us a little recap? Because I know you both had good, energizing experiences and times with Ascent. So a little quick, it was cool, more to come, or you want to tell anything specific? God in the everyday. So did you experience God in those days?
I did, yeah. It's cool, more to come.
It's cool, more to come.
It's cool, more to come.
Okay.
A movement of churches and denominational entities as well. And we are just trying to build an alliance together, I would say, a community to re-evangelize North America and ultimately reach the whole world for Jesus and build some synergistic relationships with each other, share some ideas, and also have enough structure to where it's something you can join, be a part of, and make a difference in our world. And it's a lot of great leaders from all over North America.
I would agree on that.
People you truly want to be around the table with for that conversation of how you reach North America.
I think
really good.
It's a great entity, whatever it will become in terms of its branding, of just the right people trying to solve a really good problem.
Correct.
Which is, how do we live life in community, holding hands together to do the mission of God in this new day and age?
That's right. In a day where, denominational lines are skewed a little bit. Denominational entities are struggling.
Very different.
And so we're finding new ways for us to live together in community that aren't bound by some of those structures and actually cut across them. Yeah. And just really good. And we're theologically centrist, so we're not pulled to the extremes. And just a really good group of thoughtful Christians. I was very encouraged. I was so glad our brother Luke was there with us.
Yeah, Luke, anything from you before we hop into the psalm?
Just always thankful to be there. For me, I've been running in missional church circles ever since I was in seminary. So some of these people I've known for a decade. And so it's always nice to be with them and to spend time with them. I find them very encouraging and thought-provoking. So got some ideas that we'll see how they filter out into the life of our church.
Yeah, much more to come.
I love that. It was good, more to come.
Yes.
What we're saying. No, it's great. Well, I know y'all are excited about it, so I wanted to give you a chance to just, you're coming kind of landing the plane from that and on to this.
Just let you know the Lord is at work, bringing like-minded people together to accomplish his work.
Wasn't that good?
How like God.
How like God.
He's done it before. He's still doing it. Isn't that good?
Believe it.
Isn't that good?
I believe it. And then we come to Psalm numbered 127. My Bible says a Psalm of Solomon. That's what my text says.
So before we start recording.
Trivia for y'all, just not premeditated at all, just something I'm thinking about. How many Psalms are accredited to Solomon?
Pick me.
Yes, Dennis Wiles. I don't mean to throw you off guard. I know you haven't talked about this beforehand.
Let me think. I think it's Psalm 72.
Oh my gosh, he's just so smart.
How about that?
He's so smart.
Our pastor. I'm your pastor,
Yeah,
I do know my Bible. Plus, you just told me that.
Yeah, we Googled it. We Googled it because we couldn't quite remember. We knew it was
to the
few.
Listener. Sometimes it's not a bad idea to Google something that you don't know in the Bible. Be diligent,
thoughtful
about the resources you use.
Wow.
But
well said, Luke.
The internet is a great tool, and it can be used well, and it can be used badly. So
I have even, I don't want to chase this rabbit too far, but in preparing for Bible study, Dr. Wiles, I filled in for you last week where you were gone, somewhat last minute.
Quite ably.
Thank you. But I'm happy to serve in any way. But I, at the end of preparing the Bible study, when I was trying to kind of pull in, just make sure I knew everything and kind of shore it up, I find that like OpenAI, like a chat GPT, is incredibly helpful. I would never use it. I need y'all to hear me this church. I would never use it and just say like, write me a Bible study on Exodus 7, because that's lazy and I wouldn't trust it. And you need to put the work in just to do it right, I think.
Come on now.
You really do to honor all parties. But I was trying to remember some Egyptian, I was trying to make sure I had my Egyptian religious context correct. Because looking at Exodus, they're in Pharaoh's house.
I was about to say.
And either I was going to have to go find a book off the shelf to make sure I understood what I was going to say about the Egyptian religious context, or I was going to ask ChatGPT to make sure I was right. And so either there's a way to use it and there's a way not to use it. That's what I'm trying to convey. But it was like, am I right when I'm saying this about Pharaoh? What they would have viewed Pharaoh as. And so, I mean, I really did ask it something like, how did the Egyptians view Pharaoh from religious context in Exodus 7? And it was this great little paragraph. And I was like, I thought that was right, you know? And so if I was writing a paper, I wouldn't do it that way. But just to have that in the back of my mind and kind of shore up what I thought was true. It's actually a good tool. It could be used very much in the wrong way very quickly. Yeah. And I'm sure it already is. But for what I wanted, it's pretty helpful. Yeah. Yep.
I've never used it.
It's scary good. It's scary good.
I've never seen Jurassic Park either. So
one of those is offensive.
All right,
and one's
if we were a
okay.
gambling church, which we're not,
Never.
you could place bets on whether Dr.
But
Wiles
we wouldn't.
will use ChatGPT or watch Jurassic
before
Park.
watching Jurassic Park.
I'd put my money on Jurassic Park if I were y'all.
That's a safer bet.
At some point,
We're not encouraging gambling, nor do we condone it.
or using AI inappropriately.
All
right.
There you go.
Okay. Good.
Awesome.
Okay.
So okay. We now approach.
Not only is Psalm 127 listed at least as a Psalm of Solomon.
Yes, sir.
It is a Psalm of Ascent.
Wow.
It is both.
So we know two things about it.
One of your questions was, why is this
before we hit record.
Pre-podcast.
Yeah.
Why is this a Psalm of Ascent?
That's the first thing I thought this morning. I listened to the sermon this morning, as I often do. And you read it before you got into it. No. And I was listening to it and thinking, what in the world?
Yeah.
All the other ones, I mean, not all the other ones, but you could kind of picture them holding it in their heart or even saying it out loud as they travel up to, quote unquote, Jerusalem. This one is really practical. It's like how to live life in the everyday,
That's right.
which is, but help me understand, because in my mind, the ascent to Jerusalem maybe only happens once in their whole life, right?
Yeah.
Hardly God in the everyday. This is the miraculous mountaintop moment. Yet they're saying, hey, God's everywhere. Yeah. God's in the...
What a great reminder, though.
God's where you build the house. When you watch over the city, like when you go to your day to day and you go to bed and you rise up and you eat, that's where God is. Yet they're not doing anything like that.
Right.
So, okay, help me understand.
But you're on your way to this potentially spiritually meaningful moment. And maybe you do it 3 times a year. And so it's a little more recognizable to you. Maybe you only do it once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
But you're on your way to
3 times a year for the festivals.
For the festivals, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it's good.
Or maybe only once in a lifetime. But depending on where you lived. But here's the thing, as you make your way to the holy city, to this potentially meaningful moment for you, how meaningful to me is it for you to be reminded, though, that's not where you live. You don't live on the mountain. You don't live at the point of ascent. You actually live in another place. And this is just a good reminder, as you're on your way there, we're not going to leave God in Jerusalem. We're not going to leave God there in this
So this
experience.
is like the sermon that gets preached at the end of traditional youth camp.
Yes, that's right.
You may have met God here.
That's right.
But God goes with you.
That's right.
It's
kind of like the shepherds returned and went home.
Oh, I'm being so unhelpful in this moment.
You've got to
Doesn't
return.
it sound like a psalm of decent? Right?
No, keep this in mind as you're making your way there. Keep this in mind that as we go
even as you go there and have this holy moment.
Absolutely.
You're going to return to your day-to-day life.
Reminded, yes.
So it's really, but for
bring that with you.
So then for Luke's analogy, it's what you tell the kids on the way to camp.
Okay.
It's going to inform it all, though.
So it might be more.
Tanner Watson's going to stand up on the youth camp bus and read Psalm 127 this year.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
On the way.
All the way.
On the way
as you go. You don't leave your normal life behind in the sense that it's still so much a part of who you are.
Yeah.
There's an experience awaiting you, but your context of your encounter with God, your expectations from God in your everyday, contextualize and inform those meaningful moments. So I think it's perfectly appropriate on the way there.
To
be reminded.
God's in the everyday. I say God's everywhere. That's not what we're trying to
everyday,
say.
yeah.
But God appears in the everyday.
Yeah. And absolutely. And he does.
And that's how we make up our life.
He does.
Is through our days.
That's where you live. It turns out you live in the everyday, right?
You do.
And that's why I wanted to point out at the beginning of the sermon about how, these miracles in the scripture are powerful. I love miracles, so don't get me wrong. I'm a miracle guy. I believe God is still in the miracle working business. I've seen him do some incredible things. And so, but it does amaze me at how many of these miracles take place in the everyday of their lives. Even like, you think about Jesus calming the storm. The disciples are in the boat. Well, they've been in the boat many times in their lives in the middle of a storm. It's not like it's that unusual to them. Maybe not their favorite thing, This one happened to be just a little bit more violent than normal, but it's in that moment of an everyday somewhat experience of being out on the Sea of Galilee when a storm comes up. Jesus performs a miracle that they never forget. He walks on water, at one point. I mean, they just get encountered with God as they're living their lives, which we should as well. We should as well. I just think that we so often miss him. And that's what I was trying to drive home in this message, this idea that you sure would hate to live your everyday life and get to the end of it and say, man, I just never saw God in my everyday life. Come on.
And you certainly don't want to wait for the miraculous, just waiting around for the big moments.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's why I tried to give an example. Yeah. I'm leaving the airport. I'm an hour late, not because it was my fault. It's crowded. There's so many people. It's not unusual for me to run into people in the airport that I know. My goodness, I've lived here a long time. But on that particular night, we're wading through a crowd. We didn't know anybody, and all of a sudden we see this couple that we know very well, and I have no idea what they're doing, where they're going, why they're in the airport. They tell us about their child. They're going to check on their child. A little bit concerned, and then they both say, what's the likelihood that we've run into you two right now? And Cindy just said, let's just stop and pray right now.
A moment that,
let's pray.
Yeah, that they needed.
Pray over them. And Cindy and I walked away from it, and I said, look at all these people in this airport, and we're not even supposed to be here right now. We should already be home right now. But instead, just so happened, we run into them. They run into their pastor and their pastor's wife, two people that are very important to them. And come on, y'all.
Well, and so what I love about that story and about what it teaches is that I think sometimes we can be tempted to see those things as just purely coincidental and go, oh, that was nice, and then move along with what's going on.
Even we as Christians, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, maybe even especially sometimes.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
You and Cindy just had the gumption to think, well, what if something more is happening in this moment? What if God is up to something?
Yes.
Let's stop and honor that and pray. And so one of the things that we teach when we are training table groups to go out and minister in our communities is we've taught this, what's called missional prayer. And it's really walk into a space and you just ask God, what are you doing here? And how do I join?
Right.
And so this psalm is about approaching life with that attitude. It's God, what are you doing in this space? How do I join in the work that you're already doing? And so when you go into your workplace, when you go through the airport, when you walk into your office, your grocery store, the park, you just say, God, what are you doing here? How do I join? And then you start looking and you happen to bump into a couple and they were in spiritual need and you were there to pray with them, to be with them. God is up to stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and God gets the glory from
That's
it.
Right.
But also you get to be in that moment and realize
and walk away
you're
from
being
it
a part
blessed.
of that. Yeah.
I felt like I was even more blessed than they were because, again, it just reminded me that God is at work in my everyday life.
Right.
And there it is. I mean, I just experienced it. And
He let you be part of it.
It was undeniable to me, you know. And so, I'm so grateful that happened. And then, just as I thought about just what had happened to me over the weekend, when you talk about your children, I love the imagery of the way it talks about children in this text, but your children are an inheritance. When we normally think that
tell me more.
Getting our inheritance, but children are the inheritance.
You got that Hebrew?
I can Hebrew.
Yeah, tell me what that means.
And because that word comes out of Joshua, really, that when God starts apportioning the land, I think the word's used 50 times in Joshua. I'm giving this to you as an inheritance, from me to you. And then the Solomon says, well, that's really who children are. They're an inheritance to you. They're a reward, which I thought was hilarious. They're payment for your wages. I was thinking, seriously?
My NIV says heritage, a reward.
Yeah, heritage, inheritance, reward, payment.
Yeah.
That imagery is not usually associated with children. When I think about children, I think they're not my payment. I pay for them.
And you didn't inherit them.
So, but I love how it kind of flips the script a little bit. And it's just this idea that it is in every arena of your life, look for the Lord in it, or just live it all on your own. And then it's different than Ecclesiastes. In Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanity, different Hebrew word, two different words.
Hebel.
But, the vanity of vanities in in Ecclesiastes, man, I did all this and I accomplished it, and it means nothing. This is a little different. It's just saying, if you choose to do it all, then I'm just going to go ahead and tell you it will amount to nothing. That's not your conclusion. That's the conclusion I'm giving you. Does that make sense? I'm telling you.
I'm letting you know.
Go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it on your own. Go ahead. Accomplish everything.
And
just do it without God.
Hebrew-wise versus Ecclesiastes vanity versus this is Ecclesiastes is the word hevel, which is mist. So it's where we get Abel's name. His life is short. It's a vapor.
Right.
This is, it's futile.
Yeah.
It's just worthless. Yeah. It's false.
Yeah. Go ahead and do it. I mean, if that's what you intend to do, go ahead.
But it's futile.
That's what you'll find out. It just really didn't mean anything, you know. And how sad to miss God on the everyday, because that's where he's working, you know. He's the miracle of the everyday, you know, just the wonder of watching things happen, and you just see God's hand in it, you know, watching like after on Sunday afternoon, we took our 3 youngest grandchildren to the park. So Gideon and Ada and Adler and Cindy and I and Josiah and Adrian came. And watching little Adler now, she's in between Gideon and Ada, okay? So you can see she's drawn to both of them. Sometimes she wants to play with Gideon and be younger, you know, and kind of do what he does. And then she's watching Ada get on these bars, you know, and start doing all this gymnastic stuff. Well, then she's decided, well, I don't want to play with this stick. I want to go climb on that. And I'm thinking, well, actually, you're probably a little closer to the stick, but you're really above Gideon, but you're not quite yet on these bars just yet. But to see her sense of accomplishment when I finally lifted her up, and she started grabbing a hold of things, and she was watching Ada, and she realized, okay, I need to move this hand to this. And she said, watch me, Poppy. I'm like Ada. And just to see the wonder in her, oh, that's a God moment to me. It's me watching something happening inside a child that to me is something the Lord has put in her. And it was again, I just thanked God. I said, well, thank you for letting me be here for this right here, to see a sense of accomplishment, you know, in a grandchild. And, you know, when the scripture says you're blessed if you see your children's children, well, I thought that very thing right then in that moment. I thought I just preached about this. And so, hey, y'all, this isn't just...
This is real deal.
Yeah, Adler trying to be like her sister. This is actually me watching a child take steps towards something that's really a God thing inside of her. So that's what I mean. Don't miss out on it, you know. Be thoughtful, be looking, ask the Lord, show me today.
Jack, right now, Jack is an expert cup stacker. Killing it. Sam and Ben are not bad, but man, you get Jack alone with those.
You can do it.
He's an analytical guy.
Well, we'll see if he can stack cups while Sam knocks him over. See, that will be the real
It's
test.
actually Ben.
Was it Ben? Okay, that'll be the test.
I've got a bruise to prove it. Ben bit me. I think out of anger at Jack. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But you see these lights come on, and there is. Yeah. It's a small miracle. Well, I don't know how even if it's small, it's just a miracle.
It is to see it and to watch it. And so I love to see that with children, but you know, your work. I mean, when he paints this picture of you, you know, getting up early and staying up late and toiling for your food, not in a positive way, not extolling your work ethic, but just saying, if you put everything into your work and you think that's where everything's going to come from for you and your whole identity is in that, well, you know what? Here's what you're going to discover. We'll go ahead and warn you. You know, it's going to be vain for you. Yesterday, my favorite golfer right now is Scotty Scheffler. I love Scotty Scheffler.
Why?
And he's just, first of all, he's just really good. He's the best golfer on the planet. He's been the number one ranked golfer now for over a year. And he's from here locally. He's a really strong Christian. And I was able to attend. He won the Players' Championship last year. He's won the Masters the year before that. And yesterday I was pulling for him because he was playing in one of my favorite golf tournaments yesterday, which is Bay Hill, which is Arnold Palmer's golf tournament, who was my all-time favorite golfer. But anyway, and so I so wanted Scotty to win, you know, and he won yesterday. And I was really proud of him. He won $4 million, by the way, just saying.
Pocket change.
Yeah, but here's what he said when the tournament was over, because everybody's been dogging him because he's the best ball striker maybe since Tiger Woods. He's had a hard time putting, so he hasn't won a bunch of tournaments. But he's always in the top 3 or 4 because he struggles with his putting. Well, finally got his putting all together this weekend, and he won by 5 strokes. It was almost like a joke. But nevertheless, he was interviewed after the tournament, and his wife's pregnant with their first child. Like I said, they're very strong Christians. And they just said, hey, man, you hadn't won. It's been almost a year now, I guess, however long it's been since you've won. You're still the number 1 ranked golfer in the world. You know, They kind of went on and on about his putting. And, man, you just, God, it was just so good to see it all. And they finished it. He said, Man, I just really love my life away from golf. You know, man, my wife and I are happy and expecting our first child. We got great friends. And I took a couple weeks off, just hung out with my family and my friends. And that's actually where I live. I mean, I don't find my identity in golf. I love playing golf. And, you know, obviously I make a great living at it. And it's really fun for me. And I enjoy it. And I take it very seriously. But to be honest with you, man, I just love my life. I love the life I have that y'all don't know anything about. And I just thought, and that, you know, if you put everything in to even a guy like that, that's all performance based, here's what the psalmist says. Well, go ahead and do that. Factor God out of it. And guess what? You're going to come to the end of it and go, man, what a waste. You know, what a waste. My job is a servant. You know, it's not my master. It's a servant. It gives me an opportunity to find my place in this world, to take my skills and gifts and abilities and somehow contribite to the common good.
And you did a good job yesterday, kind of making sure that they heard that work is a good thing.
Absolutely.
And it's
not the curse.
It's highly viewed throughout Scripture. Yeah. However, in this, it's a good balance to that, maybe a good warning.
Yeah.
Don't
keep
let
God
it be
involved and keep God's perspective there. And then the psalmist says, and then you can sleep at night. It's like the rhythms are restored. I'm a big rhythm guy. I just believe in rhythm. I wish I had more of it when it comes to like dancing and all that kind of stuff.
It's hard when you grow up Baptist.
I'm okay. I mean, I'm not great. I'm okay. But I'm just a big rhythm guy. I think that God has put, for whatever reason, rhythm into his creation. You know, it's a weekly rhythm. It's a daily rhythm. I mean, I feel it in my own body.
How'd the time change go for y'all? Speaking of rhythms.
It wasn't too bad for me.
I'm surviving.
I was tired this morning.
It wasn't too bad for me.
Okay,
and, what y'all don't know is because y'all are young. Here's what I love about time change now. When I was younger, y'all's age, you know, you had to change every clock in the VCR,
it changes it.
DVD.
I had to change my oven
kitchen
yesterday.
clock. And now everything is smart. You know, it's kind of changes. It's like, wow, that's awesome.
How about that?
If only my child's circadian rhythms were also smart.
Oh, yeah, true.
I know.
Yes. Problem.
Yeah. Anyway, rhythms. You do well with rhythm.
I just do. I believe God built us for rhythm. He just put it in us. He's hardwired it in, you know, and it's almost like and you can't fight it. I guess you can, but you know what, like when they do those studies where people go for a long time and don't sleep, how they get weird, or, you know what I mean?
It doesn't take long.
Yeah. It just does something to you.
Well, we're fragile, aren't we?
Yeah. The rhythm to me in the universe, you know, in the weather, seasons, I don't know. And so I feel like that's kind of what he's saying. If you want to get everything out of sync, then factor God out of your work life. Go ahead and do that. Then guess what? It's not just a loss of sleep. It's almost like a loss of purpose. But then he says, but I will give sleep to my beloved. And there's where I think, Luke, there's the little shout out to Solomon, the Hebrew word Jedidiah. I mean, Jedidiah is the name that's given to him. But there's that connection to that word there. Maybe that's his autograph, you know, that it really is Solomon, maybe.
Indeed. Before the podcast, one of the things we were talking about is one of the complexities of Hebrew is that words mean so many things.
So many. They're pregnant with meaning.
No word is more pregnant with a meaning than the participle l.
Yes, right.
Which is the letter L in Hebrew.
Such a simple word.
What's it mean? And where is it in this?
If you
Psalm.
see that of Solomon, that of in
Song
Hebrew is one letter that comes before
everything. It comes before everything. Is that what I'm hearing?
And it
before
means
Solomon.
To, toward, in, through, before, at, with, before, until, so that, in order to, by means of.
Context.
So that one
always important
of can mean by Solomon, for Solomon, to Solomon, with Solomon.
Right.
So we were joking. Maybe Solomon didn't write the psalm. Okay, I think it's still an important psalm.
And where's the beloved? Where's the beloved part?
Yeah, it's the towards to those he loves.
He grants sleep to his beloved.
Yadid.
Oh, mine says to those he loves.
Yeah.
It's Yadid in Hebrew.
What you reading over there?
Well, mine says to those he loves, but in my homework, before I did my chat BLK or whatever that thing's called.
Chat BLK.
I don't remember what y'all called it.
Chat BLT.
What's it called? Whatever. I can't even remember.
Hit us up at chatblk.com. It's Chat GPT.
Whatever it is. Before I did that, I actually went and just did a little Hebrew homework. And it's to my beloved, okay, which is Solomon's name. In 2 Samuel, when the Lord said he's going to give this child, name him Jedidiah, my beloved. The one.
So for those that have ears to hear or read, Hebrew,
Yeah.
you're like, that validates
Kinda.
that perhaps this is Solomon writing it, that
there
it's
is
of Solomon,
semantic
not just
connection to
for,
Solomon,
through, unto.
Yeah. I'm gonna
Because
go with it.
I'm not doubting Solomonic authorship.
Right.
We were just.
But it's a great word about Hebrew. That's one of the things. That's why I'm more of a Greek guy.
I doubt you if you don't.
Because Greek, even though, it's written by these Easterners, the scripture, Greek's more of a Western language. So it's very precise and much more particular, huge vocabulary. Luke is our Hebrew guy. He loves Hebrew. He loves the poetry of Hebrew.
In Hebrew.
If Dennis Wiles says that Greek is precise, Luke, what would you say about Hebrew? Hebrew is
adaptive.
Yeah, that's probably
good.
True. It is
adaptive or fluid.
That's good. Yeah, that is a good word for it.
I think it is full.
And
it was just hard for me.
Well, it's different. It is otherworldly,
hard.
truly.
Lord,
it is very
me.
different.
Yeah.
Written from right to left, and all of that.
It's beautiful, though.
It is. It is beautiful.
In fact, in this one, you were saying the first half of it, in the Hebrew, it's obvious that it all starts with the same preposition, the same.
Well, in vain.
In vain.
In vain.
Yeah.
In vain.
It's got more rhythm.
Your Hebrew. There's your poet.
And maybe more beauty to it than the translation would allow us to know. Yeah.
But then also you get this comment about your city, which to me speaks to our what I called yesterday, our civic responsibility. The Lord, if the Lord's not watching over the city, well, then all your guards are watching over it in vain. In other words, if you're not acknowledging God, now obviously Solomon lived in a theocracy, or David did, and their sense of God's protection over their city, their community, was powerful. Well, I would just say we should still feel that in our own setting, that we have a certain civic responsibility as the people of God. It's a little different because we live in a free society. I get that.
Right.
But the way we participate in it is what I was trying to point out to our people. Give God a chance to guide you in your participation, to guide your emotions, to guide your sensibilities and to learn how to live out your convictions in a way that's consistent with your Christian faith. There's nothing wrong with having convictions. There's nothing wrong with being passionate. There's nothing wrong with, being a politician. There's nothing wrong with working for the government. All those things are fine. But to me, if you choose to always live with vitriol and vengeance and hate and anger and greed, if that's just the tenor of your life, I just can't reconcile that with a Christian perspective. No, I just can't. Mm-hmm. I can get frustrated, of course, my goodness. And I understand some of the frustration, but I don't believe that I live in that tenor, and also don't believe that I'm supposed to always be motivated by fear. I just don't think that's biblical. And so that's what I get frustrated with when I watch what's happening in front of me and how all this plays out right now politically. I'm hopeful that Christians, will kind of come to our senses a little bit and be more prophetic and be more of a conscience, like Martin Luther King said.
That's a good quote yesterday.
Be the conscience. Don't be the servant of the master. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget when I was in seminary, we were listening to all these different people tell us, how to approach, our expressions of our faith. And one of the things that was going on back then was I was in seminary in the 80s. We've had this revival in those days of the, I say revival, it's not the right word. You had this shift, I guess is a good way to put it, to where evangelicalism was becoming politicized in some ways. It was very early on when that was happening. And so we had people who came to seminary to talk to us about how do you take this passion, this conviction that you have, this desire to serve in any arena and live it out as a Christian. So Bill Moyers was one of our speakers one day, and he was I think he was the press secretary for Lyndon Baines Johnson for LBJ, okay? But he went to Southwestern Seminary. He got a degree in ethics under Dr. Maston, but he found himself in the political arena. And what he told us was after he had done that, he said, in the 60s, man, it was the war on poverty and the war on drugs. And he said, I got caught up in it. And, the Kennedys were bringing Camelot to the White House, and LBJ was kind of riding their coattails. And I'll say that respectfully to LBJ. LBJ was a very adept politician, but what I mean, he wasn't as popular as John Kennedy, let's be honest. I'm talking about in America.
Right.
He was in Texas, but not in America. But then he ends up being president. Well, Bill Moyers kind of goes in with him. And Moyers said, man, be careful, because you get in and the power and the prestige and all that just takes over, and you just lose all perspective. And he said, the next thing you know, you just become an agent, And he said, one day, he said, I was leading a prayer at the White House. We were in, and the president asked me, Bill, lead us in prayer. And he said, I was on the other end of the table. And he said, I started to pray. And he said, I got about a third of the way through my prayer. And he said, the president said, Bill, speak up. I can't hear you. And Moyers said, well, I wasn't talking to you, sir. And he said, all of a sudden it hit me. That's how LBJ just viewed the world. He was the president. I'm not dogging LBJ. Point was, he said, I'm sitting there thinking, this man thinks everything is connected to, revolves around, funnels through him. And he said, I just had this moment of what have I done? He said, it was way more than that, but that was that signal moment of him going, man, be careful who you climb into bed with. Be careful, because if you're not careful, you will just get sucked in and not even realize it. And he said, it happened to me. And he said, I finally had to start distancing myself and be more of a prophet and more of a conscience than just being a servant to a cause. And I'll never forget that. I thought, what a great word, because even though I have political convictions, I have things that I think are important, I'm trying to make sure that those are filtered through my core convictions as a Christian. So things like dignity and justice and valuing human life and honoring people and being thoughtful about how I communicate, all those things really matter because I'm a Christian, Yeah. And even though they may not matter to my society right now, you can say whatever you want to say. You can say it in whatever tone you want to say it in. I live in an all caps culture right now, and I can either choose to participate in that or sit on the sideline. Okay. Well, I don't believe I'm supposed to sit on the sideline, but at the same time, I've got to be thoughtful about how I participate in it. And I just refuse to be drawn into the all caps. I'm not going to be drawn into it. I'm going to try to be thoughtful about my civic responsibility and live that out as best I know, and do it in a Christian way. It doesn't mean you have to be, mealy mouth. You don't believe in anything. There are some things I really believe in. Yeah, I really believe in them, and I'm going to vote my conscience, and I'm going to talk about them as I need to, but I'm going to do it in a way that's consistent with who I am in Christ, and model that.
Good, because there are things right now politically that are worth our attention.
Absolutely.
Yes. And even worth being upset about.
Yes, of course they are.
But when they become our identity,
that's right,
or take us away, even at an emotional health level, then they've become our God.
That's right.
And that's what we have to be careful
So
from.
I've got to invite God in. I have to invite God into that conversation with me. And so, it's like when I don't know if this is true or not, but we always tell it to be true. Somebody said to Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, man, aren't you glad we're, that God's on our side in this war? And Lincoln supposedly looked at him and said, I'm not really interested in God being on my side. I'm actually more interested in making sure I'm on his side. And I like that,
Yeah. I mean, for those who have ears to hear.
If you think about it, the God of my cause is fraught because your cause is never big enough. Yep. It's just not. God's just God. And so all causes are surrendered to him. And so our civic responsibility to me, that's a part of my everyday life. It just is. And it's broader than just my political involvement on a national level. I live in Arlington, and so there are things that concern me about Arlington. And so I want to be connected to governmental leaders, civically minded people, folks who are trying to help this be a better community. That's a part of my responsibility. This is where I live. And so I try to be thoughtful about how I engage in those conversations and where I tend to put any influence that I might have as a citizen or as a leader in this community. I try to do that thoughtfully, and make sure that I'm not just serving some obscurantist cause. It's just bigger than that to me. And that to me is so important. And so that's God on the everyday though, to me, for example, I'm asked many times to go lead a prayer at this or that. And sometimes people ask me, why do you do that? You're just, it's almost like a token. I would say, no, it's not. Anytime I'm invited to be a part of anything in our community, I'm going to try to do it as best I know how, if I can, with good conscience. But I'm going to try to represent the cause of Christ. And I always recognize that if I'm asked to lead in something like that, I'm really doing that on my own because of the position I have. So when I get to the end of my prayer, I always say, and as a Christian, I'm offering my prayer in the name of Jesus, and I would defend the right for someone else to lead a prayer in however they choose to pray. I get it. I live in a pluralistic society. But I want to be thoughtful about how I engage there because I have civic responsibilities. So to me, that's what I love about this psalm. That's why I think it's a psalm of ascent. I'm on my way up. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go worship. I'm going to experience this maybe for the first time. Mm-hmm. But as I go along the way, I need to be reminded, where God is? God's already in this moment. I'm not going to meet God in Jerusalem. I'm actually with him right now. He's a part of where we are right now. Good. Now, I may meet him in a new way in Jerusalem. I may have a different experience in Jerusalem that I can't have anywhere else in the world. Now, if I were a Jew and the temple was in place in Jerusalem, well, of course I would think that. I can't offer up a sacrifice anywhere else but Jerusalem. Okay.
No, you don't do that at home.
Yeah, I'm not gonna celebrate, the Day of Atonement at my house. I get that. However, I am going to experience God though, and so he's in the everyday. And so that's how I feel about us. Okay. Sunday's a great day. I love Sundays, but I live in every day.
Yeah. Our people only spend a few hours at church per week.
That's right.
Some more than others.
That's right.
That's not an indictment on the ones who spend less or the ones who spend more.
Right.
But
it wouldn't hurt you to spend more. It wouldn't hurt you to spend more.
Well, there's a tipping point.
As your community engagement coordinator, I want you to spend less. Go out.
That's right. Go out and share the gospel.
I'd say there's a balance. There's a rhythm, as one might say.
Even the Jewish expectation, it runs counter to the ancient world in which they found themselves, because to the other ancients, their deity's presence could only be experienced in the context of their respective temples.
That's right.
But Judaism flips that on its head and has a temple, and it's a place for significant religious observance. But the Psalms affirm this view in the Hebrew mindset that God is actually everywhere. Mm-hmm. I can make my bed in Sheol, and even there,
God's there.
God is there. Mm-hmm. And so God, in the Hebrew framework, in the Hebrew worldview, which becomes our framework and our worldview, God is with us. God is pervasive. And it's not that God is in everything. We're not pantheists or panentheists, but God is present to us. He was present to his people. They had that belief. So while they have these special religious observances and are going to the temple, it's not a denial of the presence of God in their everyday life.
That's right, which I think is very important. So what I would just say is, find God in your life. Look for him. Find him today, tonight, tomorrow morning. He's there. He's working. And he wants to meet you. I believe that. With everything in me.
Well, that's as good a place to end as any.
Yep, put a pin in it.
Amen.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Tell Me More podcast today. You can subscribe to this podcast on your app of choice, or you can visit us at fbca.org to find out more information about the podcast and our church. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.